What's up, world? It's Carpo here. Think of this as the double slit experiment. I'm looking through my fence. It's my neighbor's house. It's the double slits in the fence. Just reminded me of the double slit experiment, which is actually, I don't know, kind of interesting because that's what I was going to talk about. Not that directly, but how we perceive compared to the reality that we live. And beware, this is going to be a rant, and I don't really have. I wanted to make this video because I was just laying in the house, and I was watching the the Daily Show, Jon Stewart, and when it ended, I was just kind of laying there on the couch. I don't have cable or TV. I just download the torrent file, so I watched it. And when the media player ended, I was just kind of laying there, and it was silent, and everybody was asleep. And I got into that half-dozed state where you start to dream that you're not really asleep. And I started to embrace that half-dream state. It was really strange because this was like 2 minutes ago, and I was having these dreams, these vivid pictures in my mind of something that was so real, and then here I am in this, quote, reality. It's, sometimes I think, why are you even making a video talking about this stuff? But it's because I know so many people out there have the same feelings and understand what I'm talking about. Is that anyone who's lucid dreamed or had any dreams like that knows, I guess it would be called fringe dreaming. It's where you're just on the cusp of falling asleep, and you keep yourself from falling asleep completely, purposefully. So you put yourself into a mental state where you don't want to fall asleep, and it's like playing with dreaming. And I used to do this with lucid dreaming, put myself into a mental state to lucid dream. And I can do it any time if I just want to. I just have to focus on it. And that's just one of the real components to life that is so important, is if we really believe something and we really have it strong in our hearts and our minds, it'll work for us. Almost always. And I'm fascinated with the way that intention works and the way that love works. It's like I was watching this Bruce Lipton video earlier, and he was talking about how love is when you first fall in love. It's like, do you ever meet people who are freshly in love that are sick? No. You meet plenty of people who fall out of love and they get sick. And it's right there, just evidential proof that if you live your life in love and respect and reverence and in excitement, that you can keep yourself from getting ill. One of the things he was talking about was genetics and how we blame everything on genetics. And we really put ourselves into a mindset where we think that we're going to get a disease and die because our parents did. And there's so little evidence behind that. There's so little evidence that there's really any link between many of these diseases and genetics. Just like alcoholism is a joke to say that it's genetic. What we may have is genetic predispositions to like alcohol, but it doesn't mean you might be an alcoholic. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, but one that still needs a little bit more work as far as genetics go. But in the long run, we all manifest our own lives, and the fact is our environment affects us more than our genetics could ever hope to, as far as how we mold ourselves into our environment. The way that science and religion have intertwined themselves I was reading this thing earlier. It was the original mission of science. I believe it said something like, to observe the natural process in order to live in better harmony with nature. So to me, it really lends credibility to the idea that we can observe nature, and through learning these things, through learning about ourselves, how our bodies work, how all these different components fit together, we can start to weed out the things that we don't need. And as well, we start to weed out the things that we already know. The things that we have been able to show scientifically to at least an extent, such as the Earth revolves around the sun. There's no longer a need to have a constant philosophy about that. We've got it down to the basics. Why are we here? Who are we? We've even answered some of how we got here. I guess that brings me to creationism and evolution, which don't have to be a competition. It's my belief that they can exist hand in hand. Many theories propose that, and this is my personal take on what evolution and creation is that creation is a process that's in full bloom right now. Creation is evolution, or rather I should say evolution is the process of creation through manifesting various stages of life and finally culminating in an awareness and a self-consciousness that humans finally have. Now, as to why we have evolved to this point, the only thing I can imagine is so the universe can recognize itself, see itself. And this was what it would mean to me to revere God, in a way, if you want to use that term. When I think about the Bible, Lobo uploaded a video earlier about the Bible and how he uses a number will come to him and he'll look it up. Right when he did that, I just thought of a random passage. I thought like Mark 11 something, 27 or something, and it ended up being, not to judge others, or you will be judged by the Almighty. And it was such a perfect passage. And it reminded me of some experiences I'd had as a kid. And why, perhaps, when I was growing up, I was opposed to the Bible. And over the years, I've grown to love it because it's an interesting piece of literature that I believe encapsulates many of the archetypes and many of the ancient ideas that were carried on through the mystery schools and through the ages. And the reason why I think that it was put into such a literal format is because people wanted a God they could understand. They wanted to know Jesus. They wanted to know God. They wanted to understand what heaven was, rather than a bunch of mystics saying, well, here, you have to practice this type of geometry, and you have to understand these numbers, and you have to go out into nature, and you have to meditate. People weren't happy with putting forth so much effort to understand the universe around them. Because those who have started to research these things know that you feel a feeling within you that you are living right. And the ancient mystery schools taught that, but many people were still resistant. So I believe that the Bible is one of the most interesting books because it's encoded so much of this ancient wisdom. But the unfortunate side to it is it's been abused and it's been taken literally. Now, if you look at many of the stories written by, say, Shakespeare, these were archetypal stories. They were based on follies and bounties and all the different lifestyles of man and the experiences that we have. Not necessarily the story itself that matters, it's the symbolism behind the story. And this is exactly how the Bible should be taken, in my opinion. We have many passages in the Bible that are related to ancient texts. The whole idea of Noah and casting your net to the right with the fishes and Jesus in the boat, and the links to Pisces and the Pope's hat and the bishop's hats, and how Christianity has taken pagan symbolism and twisted it. I think that that's fine, but the problem is that it's led to intolerance, and people have misunderstood the original meaning. And the reason why I have a problem with taking the Bible literally is because, and this is always the debate that ensues with Christians, is that the Bible was written by men, and the hands of man are corrupt any way you look at it. Now, one may say, no, the Bible was written by God, but the books were written by individuals. And this debate goes back and forth, but in the long run, unless each person was Jesus, unless Jesus had reincarnated into each one of these people, and unless, these books had been written before, some of these books were written before Jesus were born, obviously, the Old Testament. So what we have is a conflict of information about the validity of the Bible. And people can have their own particular answers about why they think that it's true. People will justify why the Bible should be interpreted literally. But in my personal opinion, I find it to be laziness to assume that one doesn't have to decode the information. I guess, to me, opening the Bible and assuming you can just read it and understand it literally would be like walking out and looking at the surface of the woods, not realizing that 70-80% of the woods are actually below the surface, not understanding how the things go together. I think we all have a chance to understand ourselves better if we're willing to look at ourselves as machines with a consciousness that serve the greater good. And rather than thinking of ourselves on an individual basis and where we're going to go when we die, start to see ourselves as something different. I don't know what. Maybe an organism, a planetary body, an organism that serves the whole of the earth. Just like the cells in our body and us upon the earth, and we have the earth and the solar system. The solar system serves the galaxy, and the galaxy serves the universe. We forget these things. We really do. We have a daily life. Anyway. Those are my rants for the night. I'm going to go back in there and get into a half-dream state. I'll put forth my intention to have a lucid dream tonight. Something I can control. What should I dream about? I'll ask to meet a spirit guide again.